Good morning, everyone. Hope all is well. Back again with this live session, and today we've got a property entrepreneur, property investor, property developer who's going to be joining us and talking all about the UK property market and see what they do in the property world. So let's get talking. I'll just send this to Target 5, and I think we had a sound issue earlier. I hope it's not. MD and Audrey, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Hello.
Here we perfect. Better.
Hello. How you doing?
Good, and yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry about that. I've never done
IG Live.
an Instagram video before, so I was sort of in a blind panic talking to our office manager on the phone. She's trying to talk me through the thing, which is a bit like the blind leading the blind. But there we are. Anyway, hello.
Super. Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to
Yeah, no problem.
have
Thank you
you
for
on
inviting me.
in terms of what you do in the property world. I know you're a developer, a property investor, a property entrepreneur, if you want to put it that way. And that's what we're going to be talking in terms of what you do, how you do it, and how other people can benefit from your teachings today. So thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Pleasure. Andy, before we move forward, if you can introduce yourself as to who you are and what exactly is it that you do.
Okay, sure. My name's Andy Babbayan. I'm a landlord, an investor, and a developer, and I sort of see there's a difference between all of those things. I'm based in Brighton and Hove. My business, I run a couple of businesses with the team, my business partner Tina, and then we've got a really strong team. They're Target 5 Property Consultants and Sussex Property Partnership. So Target 5 is a development company, property development company. We source and develop properties for ourselves and other people. We do everything. So two main areas of strategy is sort of high yield, focused around Brighton, Hove, Portslade, Worthing, Littlehampton, and Bognor. So really along the south coast. And then we also do land and new build developments and planning uplift.
So all in all, you're a full-time
We
property
sort of
entrepreneur.
are. We don't do everything. So we look at stuff that's high yield, or we look at stuff where there's
A good
planning
capital
gain for
gain.
land and development. We used to do a lot of other things. We used to do a lot of sort of refurbishment of family houses to sell. We used to do turning one bedroom flats into 2 bedroom flats, that sort of stuff. We don't do any of that anymore. It's really just high yield. We do a lot of HMO. We do a lot of commercial renovation, mixed use, and that sort of thing. And then we do land stuff. And then Sussex Property Partnership is our sister letting agency that was set up because we were doing a lot of developments. We've done Target 5 has done nearly 400 developments over the last
Wow.
8 years,
Wow.
and therefore we were missing a trick in not managing them ourselves. So
Giving it to other agents like myself
well,
and
exactly. We were having to give to other agents. We were sort of we didn't have the control, and we also weren't making the money. So and lettings is a really difficult business to be in, and you probably know yourself. But those are our two businesses. Yeah, and I'm literally I've come now from a property meeting, and I'm sort of parked up.
looks like it. That's why you were in the car. So I
Yeah,
hope you're
exactly. Well,
not
I
driving
was
or
sort of
anything.
trying to judge it where I was, trying to get back in time for the meeting, but I've got, somewhere with reception in the middle of, in a nice part of Hove. So,
Good stuff. Good stuff. Um, Andy, I want to take you a few years back, quite a few years back into your childhood, teenage years, when you're growing up, when we're all growing up, and we see a lot of careers in front of us, right? It'd be an architect, it'd be a property entrepreneur like yourself, property agent like myself, doctor, lawyer. We look at all these big careers in front of us that we sort of aspire to become one day. What is it that you wanted to become when you were growing up? Was it what you're doing right now, or was it something odd out of the box, like an astronaut? I've had this so many times.
no. I mean, I can't remember I can't remember who said it. I think it's I think it's Baz Luhrmann said in a lyric. He said, some of the most interesting people I know in their mid-40s still don't know what they want to do when they grow up. So I didn't ever know what I wanted to do, and I sort of had loads of different ideas. My parents are both engineers. Um, I I was interested in property. I sort of recognised that my parents, despite their career, having university education, had some decent careers. That their any wealth that they had was purely down to the properties that they bought. So I'd recognise that, but I didn't see that as a career path. I think engineering, and then I ended up going to university and studying management science at UMIST, which is now part of the University of Manchester, and I sort of bimbled through that, and then ended up I just sort of somehow ended up in the military. My dad's an
Wow.
ex Royal Engineers officer, and I literally went into the careers office in my last couple of weeks of university. Went into the Army one and went into the Marines one, and I've always been as fit as a butcher's dog, and I was just like, I'll do something where I can just continue to do sport. I was still so um,
Absolutely.
immature at that age in my early 20s. I didn't really know. I didn't want to become an adult yet, and I saw the army as a way of staying a child for a bit longer, and therefore I sort of and then I ended up.
Did you get posted to any of the hot, you know?
I've been saying, well, I mean, I've spent nearly half of my life in warm places. I grew up in the Middle East. I was born in Dubai. My
Okay.
parents were, and I then ended up back in the army, and I've served in Iraq, Afghanistan.
Wow.
I've been to Kuwait. I've been to Oman. I've been sort of all over the Middle East, and then when I left the army in
That that
2009.
that's that's where it's all happening, right?
Say again.
That's where it's all happening.
Well, it certainly was during my years. I think in the
Yeah.
previous years, the years before that, it was happening in
Was
Yugoslavia. Before that, it was happening in Ireland. But yeah, for me, it was warm places. So yeah.
good stuff. So when did you actually finish off with the army? I mean, when did you sort of retire? And then you thought that, okay, now is the right time to get into property. And why property?
Okay, well, so I left the army in 2009. I was by that stage already in property. I got my first property we've got property abroad in 2002, next property in 2003 or four. I can't remember, but
And were these investments in the Middle East?
no, 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 no. So this is so as when I was in the army, we bought I bought a place in we got sort of a bit of we ended up buying a place in Cyprus, which was sort of
Okay.
that was the first, you know, um, bought essentially for my dad to live in, and then it was the first property. Then and me and my brother then started to invest in the Midlands. He went back to university in Coventry, so we started to invest then. So I was already sort of in property as a sort of low level landlord, but by the time I left the army in 2009, I then went into recession, had a job in the UK, working commercial defence, and then took a job over in Abu Dhabi. And I lived in Abu Dhabi until 2012, and from then I did that really to build up as much money as I could. I started to invest in other
They
bits.
they 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 pay well out there, don't they?
They pay well, they pay tax free, and it was it was a good gig. I mean, uh, and I ended up sort of getting really into, I refined the business model out there. I invest in loads of different things. I mean, I've got investments in, I was sort of physical silver. I own freehold forestry, trees in Germany. I've all sorts of different investments beyond stuff, buy to let
So you're
stuff
not
in
a
the UK.
property entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I like to think so. And I've got, I like to have my fingers in a few different pies that go beyond property. Some of which have worked out fantastically well, and some haven't, to be honest. And I like that everyone everyone has learnings attached to it, and every experience is a gift. So it's yeah, no, I got into that, and then I sort of refined the model, came back in the end of 2012, and that's sort of really when Target 5 started. It was incorporated in 2013. Yeah.
Coming back to the recession, you spoke about it, where a lot of people were hit during that time. I mean, it didn't depend where the property was, but as an investor, if you were not savvy in terms of investing in the properties, that sort of came to bite them, later on with during the crash, post the crash, whatever. Did that crash sort of affect you? or did it
Well, I mean,
have negative implications on your thought process into how you're going to invest later on in life?
100%. So I was, we were bitten. We weren't bitten as hard as some people because we weren't as well exposed as some people were, But we had we bought one flat we bought in, bought on a credit card in 2007. So literally at the worst possible time.
Yep, yep.
Back in the time of gifted deposits, and what is now essentially, you know, um, you know, um, yeah, it's not the things that aren't allowed now. That sort of thing. And we did that, and then
120% mortgages.
well, it's just like essentially gifted deposits, and then so I mean you're not actually putting any money down, so it's essentially what would be now mortgage fraud. And I didn't realize that then. And as it is, we sit with a decent amount of equity now, but that then immediately went into negative equity. We paid 147,000 for a flat that on paper was worth 180,000 and was immediately worth less than 100,000, and we had a mortgage for 147,000, so we sat there in negative equity. We had to, it was with Northern Rock, we had to repay some money that was uncomfortable for us to repay at the time.
It's really difficult with these night sessions sometimes.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was really, really tough, and we took a load of learnings from it. I mean, that's why I went into a lot more physical assets like silver and commodities like wood, because it's a hedge against what's happened now. And I've seen the value of my silver stock and the value of timber go up. Well, silver certainly in the last 3 months has gone up enormously, and
Timber will go up because people need to
timbers
develop.
and our timbers thing's gone up between 2016 and 2020 has gone up by 40%. So
Wow.
that these things are hedges against. So I've always did that, but then I'm now very much into property, and I can't pretend to be. I'm not properly diversified by any level. I'm sort of, I'm in property. But,
Totally.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, but
I've heard people investing in gold, silver, currency, other minerals, oil, maybe all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. But wood, why? What made you choose timber over gold, maybe?
Well, I mean, I was already in silver, and silver we sort of, probably, incorrectly. I had a friend, a very good friend of mine, who worked for the like Abu Dhabi investment funds, so like one of the deepest pockets in the world. These people
Of
buy,
course.
we might go and buy some shares.
They buy everything they put their
No,
finger
no,
on.
no. They like, for them, a strategic purchase wouldn't be a house; it would be like Gatwick. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, they will buy like
Yeah.
proper infrastructure stuff,
How
and
how the
but
Qataris
they,
go out and buy different, different
yeah, exactly
assets.
that. But anyway,
Yep.
this guy that I spoke to, he was like, "Look, you want to be in silver, and it hasn't come right yet, but you want to be in." And he was in certain commodities. He was very much a commodities guy, and he said, "Look, get into water, get into wood, get into these things." And the one I invested, it was a sort of a North American hardwood that has loads of different uses, and therefore you've got loads of different exits for it. At the time, there was some EU subsidy that's since disappeared, but it basically was just something that is easily usable and can be grown in a climate in not like in East Germany that it used loads of uses, manufacture, furniture, all of these different things. So it seemed like a sensible thing.
As long as people need a property, they need wood.
As long as they need property, they need wood. As long as they need a chair, they need wood.
Yeah.
As long as they want a climbing frame that's not made of plastic, they need wood. That's
Absolutely. Uh, Coming back to property, you mentioned in 2012 is when you started your company Target 5 after
yeah. Well, it
investing.
was actually incorporated in or became a proper company in 2013. But yeah.
Okay, super. And since then, what's been sort of the ideology of you going out and buying? You mentioned that you were first a small sort of refurbishment company where you were doing family homes refurbishing and investing in as a landlord. What was the ideology and how has this changed over time, looking at different economical, the laws coming in with the UK government, the world government, the EU, everything put together? How has that changed over time in sort of diversifying your portfolio or diversifying your property business?
So we set when set up Target 5, it was with, the it was set up with a sort of an ideology of essentially, I mean, we have our sort of 5 core values and going, I've got a sort of separate post on that, but it's really just around our, the central one of that really being integrity. And we wanted to be a trustworthy business. There's some other investments that I went into where, the people weren't honest with me. There was no integrity. We lost some money on an investment up in Newcastle.
When you say
And
investment, did you go in as a JV partner and you put
no, an
money down?
investment. We were going to buy a property off plan, and we were misled in the situation. And because there was an intermediary, a sourcing partner involved, it was sort of dishonest from day one. So the whole idea was that the Target 5 was the 5 core values: integrity, trustworthiness, respect for ourselves, respect for others, and ambition. And those, that was to sort of to go by those 5 values. And then to target was the military link. And then also just to make sure that we keep that, we keep that sort of target in mind. That's what we've got to do. Everything we do has to fit with that, and continue to target that first, and then everything else will come. So that was the idea. It was just is not to be sort of fly by night. So the whole thing was to sort of set this business up that's sort of like ethical. It's around making money for people, but it's around doing it right. And that's why the model was born, where we essentially we work with people. We it's a service. So we source and develop properties for people, but we're paid on success at the end of the project. So
Okay,
we're then aligned with them, and people that then engenders trust. And that's what we found. We've only really in the last year started to do any form of social media or advertising, because we haven't needed to. All of our work and everything's come through referral and recommendation. It's only as we've started to do the likes of the crowdfunding and we're going to be having a SaaS. We'll be looking at in bringing in other funds. We need to do more of this stuff. And also we should have more of a profile in order to give back to the community, which is important to us.
of course. And
But
this
the
is why the whole point of doing the live session, to pick your
Of course
brains
it
as
is,
to,
exactly.
you
And I
know,
get,
what
and I
people
do.
can learn from you.
That's it. And I will give, we do give our time freely, as other people have given their time freely to us. And my journey, I've learned from so much from other people, and there is so much to learn. So that's where we started off. We then got into we were doing sort of student HMOs from the start, and then really we just sort of got into a stage of just doing, our funnel was really, really wide. We just looked at anything that made money, basically. And we sort of built up, and we were also doing, we had a maintenance business, we had a sort of building company, and we were doing a lot of refurbishment for other people as well. So in 2016, I think we did 100 projects in that year. It was absolutely
Wow.
crazy. But it was, I mean, a lot of stuff. So we took on a landlord. I mean, he owned sort of 3 or 4 properties in a street that runs parallel to this one. He's a landlord. His family had owned a portfolio for 70 years. We
Wow.
looked at that portfolio. I looked at it, ran a spreadsheet for him, and he could, show that he could move his rent from what it was sat at sort of 300, 400,000 a year. He could bring that, comfortably into, towards 1.2, 1.3, just by making changes to a portfolio. So we did a lot of development for, maximization for people. And we, as well as sourcing and developing stuff ourselves for our clients, we're also almost adding a building service for people. And it was an exciting time, but it was a crazy time, and we were really, really lucky. I think we were in a rising market at the time, but also, we didn't all of the things that are important to us now, like systems and scalability and all of these different things. We were sort of just trying to run as fast as we possibly could. So since then, I've sort of learned to have a clearer strategy, understand what it is that makes us money, what it is that we feel really comfortable with ethically, what is aligned with the city in which we live, you know, because we're also, my business partner and I, we're trustees of a local homeless charity, and it's
Okay.
really there's loads of problems in Brighton and Hove. Homelessness is just one. Huge issues around addiction and these other things, and there are loads of different. It's a city of huge contrast, where you've got a load of opportunity, you've got a load of people with money, but loads of people with none. And you just got to make sure that whatever you're doing is sort of aligned with that, aligned with the needs of the city. That doesn't mean we don't look to make money, because we do 100%. But
Two
it's
questions I want to ask you here, Andy. You mentioned about making money, right? And a lot of youngsters these days, they think that, oh, I can get into this and tomorrow I'm going to be a millionaire. Or also the fact that I want to get into property, but I don't know how to source, the funds, the investment, all that kind
I just
of thing about making money firstly and how they should go about investing in property.
okay. So I mean, loads of people have a different spin on this. It's always going to be based on your own personal experience. For me personally, I've found that, and I was just talking to someone about it earlier on, the years in which, and this year coming up will probably be our most successful year. And this one has been a really, really rewarding year, not least because of the challenges that we've all faced globally with COVID and whatever. But some of the other years where we've made the most money haven't been the years that have been the most rewarding. And the thing there is just don't. So set off work. Don't be too focused on the money, because that will come
Absolutely.
if you do it right. Because if you don't do it
Absolutely.
right, you'll be tempted to take shortcuts. You'll be tempted to take constantly be trying to look for low hanging fruit, when actually in developing a body of knowledge and doing something well, then and having a sort of abundance mentality, you will find that so much comes to you. I mean, what I would say is firstly, like, there are loads of temptations to spend loads and loads of money on training and all of that sort of stuff, whereas there's so many things that are available, like what you're doing now, and so many other people that are free, and you'll find that there is so much experience. I mean, I live on my road. I don't live on a super posh road or anything, but my road in Hove, there is. I mean, I know probably 10 developers who live on my road or around my road in Hove, and you could just like interview people and send emails to people in one street in one town, and for free you probably get as much knowledge as you need to get started. It's just, there's everything around you, so just go and be humble and listen to people, and then be patient, slowly build up a body of knowledge and a strategy, and understand your location, then choose a location
But
and match that together.
a lot of people also get confused with so much knowledge out there. This guy's saying this guy's saying this
Exactly
person is
that.
saying this. How do you sort of, I mean, I'm sure before you invested in property and you got into property, you must have sort of gone out, got the knowledge from wherever you got it from, and put that together. I mean, how did you do it when it was in your days and you were getting into property? Did you go out and look out for knowledge, or did you just go in, say, let's see what happens, we'll build the experience, and as we go along, we'll learn?
It was a little bit of both, and I would certainly have done it slightly differently, potentially, albeit I've been lucky. It's worked out, reasonably well. I mean, so I've always, looked. I always believe in, like, this sort of little motto of myself is always have the coffee, because you've always got people reach out to you, and I've reached out to people, and you never know what's going to come from it. So I literally come. I mean, the guys in the office will know what I'm constantly going out for coffee with people. I've just come from one, and you never, so it's, yeah. I mean, go and do that, and get your sort of your information, but then also there comes a point where you've got to take
Put that
action,
information together
because you never,
and exactly.
otherwise. And the problem is that the information that you're given, because all of these people, who are talking about stuff, they've obviously had success, or most of them have, in what they're talking about in their location. So there's about 300 million different ways to make property work. You've just got to choose one. And the problem is that we could talk on a subject now and say, right, this is what you need to do now. and then somebody like dwells on it for a year and then does it, and then they go and say, well, it didn't work, and it's like, well, no, that's because it worked a year ago, and it is
Exactly.
constantly. I think
It's
you need to
constantly
be.
changing, right? So
It's a constantly changing thing, and therefore there comes a point where you've actually got to take action, and you will make mistakes, and you've got to accept the fact that you will make mistakes, and you've got to accept the fact that you are going to get bumps and bruises,
I
and
think
that
this is what
you know
people are scared about, right? Taking that
yeah,
risk and the fear of falling.
yeah,
This
that
is where people sort of held back, and they're held back in terms of not going ahead and investing, or maybe not starting their own business, or just sticking to security, right? A lot of people these days, because of what's going on in the world right now, I think people want to have that security in place before they go out and do anything, whether it's even investing, whether it's even buying a property, whether it's starting a business, everything put together. It's like, yeah, and as you mentioned, like, get that information, use that information, and then take action, because unless you take action, you won't get anywhere.
exactly 100%. And I've got a, like a little bee in my bonnet, but my risk is sort of one of my like chosen specialized subjects. My master's is in risk, and people have got a completely irrational understanding of risk, and therefore they do that. They'll sit there for ages, and they'll think, well, I don't know, and they're pouring their money into a pension plan, and you don't need to read too far into the newspapers to see that there's huge problems there with and my parents, their pensions came to the end of their came to retirement, and their pensions had chronically under delivered. But yet people see that as less risky than investing in a property that has performed, and has gone through a growth cycle without interruption over the past 200 years, and people
Of
see
course.
that as being more risky. They invest in their careers, and believe in a thing that is their careers, with these multinational companies that don't care about them at all, and are constantly going through restructuring programs where their entire career can be made meaningless overnight.
we
And yet
we
they
we,
see
we
that
we've
as
seen
being,
we've seen in the last few days Arcadia.
of course we have, and it will happen time and time again. Unfortunately, and I don't take any pleasure from that. But then people see that as being a less risky option than investing in their own future and taking control of their lives. And I'll be completely honest, it just completely baffles me. But you know, that's why we're doing this, isn't it?
As we say, everyone for themselves. I mean, you can do as much as you want in terms of sharing the knowledge and everything, but if someone doesn't want to take action, you can't do anything about it, right? I mean, how much, like, you can take the horse to the pool to
Exactly.
have water, but you can't bring the pool to him. How much can you do to it? Um, but coming back right now, you mentioned that 2020 has been one of the best years, even though we've been going through this pandemic and everything. I mean, when 2020 started, did you sort of think that, okay, everyone knew about COVID since November 2019, but did you think that it's going to have such an effect on life, on business, and careers put together the way they are right now? And did you think that your business is going to flourish given lockdown part one?
I mean, no. I mean, if you knew about it in November 2019, well, you didn't tell me. No, I'm kidding. I mean, you listen. That's the thing. There's so many of these different things that you see, and there's something in there that's called us all cold, in that we see these things that arise in different parts of the world, but we don't honestly believe that it's going to affect us. And it was, it was sometime into, well into, when we went to first lockdown in March,
March, end of March.
even in days before that, you're still thinking, really, I mean, so I mean, we didn't, guess, sort of, we always try to make sure that anything we do, we're not too exposed. We always look at our sort of exits and whatever else. So we have clearly defined exits, not in case of pandemic, but in case of loads of different scenarios. And as it was, that was fine. And we were able to sort of, some things we weren't able to move through on. Other things we were able to sort of to work through. We had some projects ongoing. But what it did give us an opportunity to do was just to really refine our model, and to really, in that first lockdown, to just focus on what it is that we want to be doing. We're funding now far more of our our projects ourselves. Because we're, me personally and us as a business are, we've got a lot more liquidity around us than we've had in the past. But also, we're far more attractive to investors. Faultless credit record and track record, and therefore, lenders and everyone, even in times where they're not lending as much, they are still looking to lend, and they've been looking to lend to us. So that's been really good. But we're just able to sort
You,
of just make
you
that.
you make it sound so easy, right? There's so many people complaining right now. Oh, banks are not lending. Banks are not
Well, no,
lending.
but
Banks are this. Banks are this.
but you just have to have the. I mean, so Tina, my business
Like
partner,
you
is more.
mentioned, a flawless track record,
Well,
right?
exactly. I mean, it doesn't mean to say that you can't. It's still, there's still challenges. I'm sure. If Tina's watching this, she's probably sort of screaming at the screen, to say that is difficult. But we've been able to work our way through it, and there are, you just need to have a really clear offering, a really clear plan, and to have a track record and understand what you're doing. And that's what we offer to our clients when we do stuff as well, is that they know that we deliver on what we say. So and therefore we've been able to. We then also we already were looking at the global trends around what's happening in the commercial and residential permitted development opportunities. We've always worked in and around planning and permitted development, and have a really strong team, architectural team, really strong planning team. So we knew all the opportunities that were coming up anyway, and all that's happened with COVID is that they have accelerated that, and they've and with the and there've been some governmental planning changes as well that we're probably like to see some more of, as we've seen. That meant that we've been in the right place at the right time. I did a program last year with that some of the guys on this year with Dan Hill, property entrepreneur, and that was just, it was really useful for me just to sort of to take a step back and think slightly holistically about the business. It just meant that when we came into this year, we were sorted out the funding. We'd had a bit of a clearer plan about where we wanted to go, and we've just been able to exploit some fantastic opportunities. And what's really exciting for us now is that, we've got a lot of stuff potentially going on. We don't have to just be slightly wary, and this is where the whole risk thing. You don't want to. You need to make sure. Yeah, you don't want to get pushed too hard. But yeah, that's where we are, and that's why we've sort of gone from what would have been a transitional year as suddenly
So
going to
it
go
looks like 2021 is going to be a smooth sailing because you've got already everything planned for 2021.
2021, 2022 is going to be absolutely nuts for us. Yeah, and I'm so excited about that.
Super, super. Andy, it's been a pleasure talking to you in terms of I mean, you're the first Army personnel that I've had on here. So it's absolutely amazing to know about how an Army man has now moved into being a property entrepreneur. Super amazing story. Thank you so much for joining me. But before you go, I do this with all my guests. We've seen the whole point of me doing this was, of course, sharing free knowledge with people, whoever wants to use it, whenever they want to use it. Secondly, sharing some positive words. We've seen a lot of negative sentiment around us for the past year. People have lost jobs, businesses, everything. I mean, being a developer, you must have read about how many construction companies have gone under during this whole time. What positive advice would you like to share with the world today so that they can take that on board and move forward in life? And coming from an Army personnel where you have to keep yourself positive at every single time. I'm a big fan of watching Army movies, from World War movies to Afghanistan, Iraq, all that kind of stuff. I love watching that. And I know I mean, that's just a film, but it must be so terrifying when you're on that battlefield and you're sort of firstly protecting yourself and your country and your people. So you got to keep positive, whatever the circumstances, unless your eyes are closed. But what positive advice coming from you today, what would you like to share with the world?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I mean, it's like the wartime analogy, and there are very few positives that come out of war. And there are there's going to be loads and loads of negative, stuff that's going to come out of what's happening at the moment. And we all need to, get behind get behind the government, get behind, all these different things to make sure that isn't too, that we can all get through this. But at the same time, we also need to have decent business running. And the thing is that in turbulence, and this is the positive thing, in turbulence, and we're in a turbulent time now, and we're going to go through a period of turbulence. With turbulence comes opportunity. And as Daniel Hill says on Property Entrepreneur, he calls it the gold rush. We go into a time now for the next, and it could be up to 5 years, of a
Gold
period of
rush.
opportunity that might not be repeated in our lifetimes.
Absolutely.
And therefore, there is no better time than now to be getting into this. And I started, and I got into my got into it, and very, very quickly after I started, I went into the sort of global recession. And yes, we are going to have, we might well have a recession, but it's going to be a slightly different one, and it's going to be one that creates a huge amount of opportunity for property investors, entrepreneurs, landlords, developers. And so it's a wonderful time to be in this, and people can do really, really well and do some really great things, as long as they just do it ethically, then it could be a wonderful time for us.
Super. Andy, and I'm sure if someone hits you up on your DMs, I'm sure with advice, whatever knowledge in terms of property investing, I'm sure you will do that for them. You can help out, So anyone listening,
we'll
you want to get into property development, property investment, whatever it is, whatever knowledge you need, I'm sure, like 30, 40 minutes are not enough, but go and pick Andy's brains. I'm sure he'll help you out. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and hope to see you soon in London whenever you're down.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care. All the best. Thank you.
Andy, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that was Andy Babbayan from Target 5 Properties, property entrepreneur, developer, investor, army man. Wow, amazing. The first ever. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much to Andy for joining me today. Thank you to all the viewers that tuned in. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I'll see you again. Take care.